All right, Coach, we'll start with a brief statement about the weekend and then we'll open it for questions.
Yeah, highs and lows. I thought competitive in game one, had an opportunity to be able to tie it up. And, when it comes down to the stretch, your whole goal is to get that tying run up to bat, and we were able to do that. Had some really good things, really happy with Abby Hay, needed some performance out of that first base spot. And so really good to see that she had a very competitive weekend. Obviously game two, the bats were alive and we played extremely well, had a great pitching performance. And then game three, grind like that. Those are the games that we got to try to win. Really grinded out that first run, and then good outing for 4 innings out of Marissa McCann. It was great to see that in her start that she was able to keep them off balance for 4 innings, and then, just left the ball over the heart of the plate, which is definitely going to happen at this level. But we just didn't have an opportunity to be able to come back from that deficit. But I mean, overall, we're still not playing our best ball. We're finding ways to win, and hopefully down the stretch, like we have four big weekends left, that we just got to continue to put it together and stay healthy and just continue to grind and find a way to be able to claw ourselves back in. But I mean, we're in a good spot. Like what you guys would know better than I do, is all 13 teams in the top 25. Like, yeah, pretty much like that. Like it's a grind. It's a tough situation. I don't know if there's any other sport that's that competitive in the SEC. So it's just a matter of getting wins when we can and just stay competitive to give our RPI an opportunity to be able to host.
I guess I'll start. On the season 1-5 on the road in SEC play, just what have kind of been the struggles that you've seen kind of coaching in that type of environment? Obviously, it's tougher. There weren't as many road environments early on in the season, so maybe let's do it. But what have you seen in that? How can you kind of turn that around?
Tennessee was in a different situation because it was our opener. Completely different. So not to take anything away from that Tennessee weekend, but different, and first time playing a top 10 team. So I'm gonna chalk that one up. In terms of Arkansas, the atmosphere was very electric. They had their school band in the stands, which is something we've never experienced in softball. So that added a different layer of energy. They're extremely enthusiastic. They get on every single moment. I mean, when they're calling their lineup, and I mean, there's just so much energy in that venue, from the berm all the way to the stands, and then you add the band. It's just tough to play these opponents. And when you play at home, it's like you have an extra player. So you're playing 11 against 10. So, they have that momentum on their side, and then being able to close out a game is a little bit more challenging when you're on the road, but we got to find ways to be able to do it. And I think the difference is if we can quiet the crowd and score early. In game three, we had an opportunity with the bases loaded. If we able to put a couple runs across the board, then it's a different situation. Like, we're controlling the momentum and the crowd's not as loud. So we got to be more aggressive when we have those opportunities and not let it come down, because I mean, we clawed our way to get that first run in game three. Like, we had to work extremely hard for that run, and then they come back with one swing and tie it up. So the momentum wasn't in our favor for very long. It was one batter. So we have to do a better job in being able to quiet that crowd.
Coach, talk about that one swing. Obviously, it feels like your opponents are outscoring you when it comes to home runs. Is that something that you've noticed a lot, and how that momentum swing has sort of affected your team?
Looking at our team offensively, I'm just not happy with our inability to get ourselves on time. Like, we're just not hitting balls hard. We're getting some blue pits, and that's great. Like, we're putting the ball in play, and we're manufacturing runs, and we're drawing walks and hit by pitches. Like, all those things are great. But when a team takes a hack and has a very powerful swing, if it's a swing and miss, or it could be a fly ball, it keeps you on your toes a little bit. And I feel like we don't have that intent when we're in the batter's box all the time. When we feel we can dominate a pitcher, we do. And that's how it was in game two. Like, we were really aggressive and we were taking really good swings. But when the pitcher is a little bit more dominant, we just get unsure of ourselves. And then we just try to put the ball in play, and we're defensive rather than still being aggressive. That's what teams are doing against us. that they're jumping all over our misses if the pitcher leaves the ball too much over the plate. They're putting a great swing on it, and that's why it's getting extremely hard. So we have to do a better job of that. And, we'll focus on that today in practice. And, we head up to Drake on Wednesday, and, we'll have another day of practice on Thursday. And it's great that we're playing home so we can have a better routine. But we have to put better swings on pitches.
It's just happy. After 4 games of her, 4 games start, she kind of leads the team with a 333 average SEC play. What's kind of impressed you just about her approach, and what is something that maybe some of the other players can kind of take away from her approach kind of going forward?
So Abby is one, and I attribute this to her growing up playing baseball and having a father that played baseball. So she's been around the game probably a lot longer than a lot of our other players and understands it from a different intellect. Abby will come up to me and talk to me about pitchers' approaches, and if I was calling the game against her, how would I throw to her? And so the game within the game stuff is very, very mature for someone who's a freshman in college. And I think that gives her the edge, that she understands a little bit more about how pitchers are going to attack her. And another strength of Abby is that she's just so unbelievably even keel. Like her heart rate is probably extremely low throughout the entire game. She doesn't get too high. So she's not speeding up the game when the pressure's on. She stays within herself and controls what she can control. And that's why she's been able to really capitalize. I would say if I was to draw a lineup in the fall, she was my DP. Like she had a really, really successful fall, and then she had a little setback with a little injury. And she's getting herself back and took advantage of the opportunities that she had, and now has won the starting first base position. And I'm really excited to be able to see the more she sees this pitching, the more she's going to develop.
Coach, I mean, Abby Hay was definitely a big boost to the bottom of your lineup, but you look at some of the games, especially game 3, didn't get a lot of production from 3 through 9. Did you kind of see the team not kind of spiral in once one person gets a hit, the next person does, the next person does it? And what can you do to kind of rep?
If you look at game 2, and we talked about this with the team, if you look at game 2, at one point, we had 9 quality at-bats in a row. And they weren't all base hits. Like it was drawing walks, it was hit by pitches, and it was a successful at-bat. That's how we're going to win ball games, is having quality at-bats. When we don't draw pit walks, when we don't get hit, when we don't have situational hitting, then we're putting all the pressure on one person to get that big hit. And if our lineup isn't designed to be able to do that, it puts a lot of pressure on that one person. So every hitter that steps in the batter's box has to analyze, what's my job right now? My job's to get on base. So get on base any way you possibly can, rather than trying to hit a 3-run home run with nobody on base. And that's where they get outside of themselves a little bit and try to do too much.
Time. You kind of look at that approach on Saturday. What was maybe different on Saturday than Sunday's performance? Just kind of the offensive scheme and how kind of things unravel.
It all comes down to the changeup. It all comes down to when the pitcher has a successful changeup, it throws us, it's like a watch. Like literally, it's like a grandfather clock. Like all of a sudden that the metronome at the bottom is out of whack. And when a pitcher has a changeup, it's totally disrupting our timing. And we're really having a hard time disciplining ourselves to pick which pitch to hit, either hard or soft. We get caught in between. So on Saturday, they didn't have effective changeup to throw us out of whack. And that's really been our Achilles heel all season long, is being able to recognize the changeup, because if we don't recognize it, we have no idea which one to hit, hard or soft. So we got to do a better job to be able to recognize it. Our dugout's doing an amazing job keying it and picking it up. Our hitters have to be able to keep our hands back so that we're able to stay on that pitch a lot longer.
A lot about pitching side, you play 3 different starters, and CC gets to start on Friday. What went into the decision when you were making those starters to have Harrison go on Friday and McCann on Sunday?
I think CC earned it. She's had some really good outings. Krings has struggled a little bit, and I think a lot of that comes into teams having a real good scouting report against Krings and knowing that she's been the game 1 starter. So just kind of mixing it up from 2 things, because she's earned it and CC earned that Friday night start, and then also to kind of throw a little wrench in there and maybe catch them off balance and take a little bit longer to be able to make some of those adjustments.
Yeah, speaking of Lauren, obviously picked up her first one in a while. Just kind of what you see for her, what was it like to kind of see kind of the bounce back she's been on? I think her last 3 starts, she's kind of turned the corner from some of those tendencies.
Yeah, and I think Krings it was one of her better outings. She looked more locked in. She was more focused and more determined. She knows she wasn't throwing extremely well. And the biggest thing that we've been working on is not living on one side of the plate. When you can dominate a team on one side of the plate, you kind of get used to doing that. And we face some teams that have taken that away from her. So she has to be able to throw quality pitches on the other side of the plate. She obviously needs her changeup, and I talk about that all the time. But the difference with Krings is that she was able to throw both sides of the plate to keep them off balance.
What impressed you about the first weekend?
Same thing. I mean, she was throwing both sides of the plate, real effective with her changeup, had real good control into that home run, into that fourth inning. And again, it's one pitch. And we talk about a lot that when a pitcher throws the ball up in the zone, which majority of our pitchers do, they're rise ball pitchers, the ball's going to get a hit in the air. We only have one drop ball pitcher. So realizing that those things are going to happen, we just can't have too much of the ball over the plate. And one pitch just got away from her at that moment. I would have liked to see her rebound a little bit more, not give up 2 back-to-back home runs. And that's a learning experience for her. But she threw both sides of the plate extremely well. She had some key strikeouts, and really her changeup was very effective.
Coach, we look ahead, another big week in the SEC, obviously not to overlook Drake, but we got Florida at home. What are you hoping to see out of your pitching staff against a very good Gator team?
You know, what I'm playing around with right now is, do I need to make some pitching changes earlier and not expect the starter to go through the lineup twice? You know, that's something I'm going to be considering. And we always have somebody ready, but it's like I put a lot of trust into that starter, and I want them to be able to go as far as they possibly can. But, you know, Florida's a really strong team, and maybe we're going to have to make a pitching change if we're not getting the swings and misses that we need to by that starter. So that's the first thing that I'm going to be looking at a little bit more, and maybe pitch by committee a little bit more in this series, because they are such a strong team. Florida also likes to run a lot and put a lot of pressure on our defense. And I thought that we handled that extremely well against Arkansas. The top of their lineup is very fast, and probably one of their leadoff hitters, probably one of the fastest players that we've ever played against. And we did an unbelievable job keeping her off the bases. So we're going to have to do the same thing against Florida, because they have really athletic speed. They like to put runners in motion. So we have to be really quick defensively.
Obviously, Drake tomorrow. What's been your message to the team to kind of avoid something like the last week? Just kind of as you try to prepare for Florida, but also obviously understand that you got to win this one if you want a regional berth.
Yeah, you know, we definitely have to. And, you know, it's not to put more pressure on a game, but it's get them to realize what level do we have to play at to get to where we want to go. And that's our standard. And paying attention to that, and not worry about it's Drake or Florida or Georgia. It's, what does Mizzou softball have to do in order to get to where we want to go, and just continue to measure that.
So obviously you guys travel on the road again. I believe this will be the 10th consecutive week that you guys are playing at least one game on the road. Obviously it's been
Holy
wonders
cow.
wonders for your RPI, but have you noticed any sort of like effect on the team, whether it's fatigue, any sort of drag?
The biggest thing I've noticed with this schedule is our inability to practice. That's probably been, from a coaching standpoint, the most frustrating, because we obviously have to have an off day. It's required. We'll practice on Tuesday, and having a midweek game on Wednesday, like I don't want to bury them on that Tuesday knowing that we have a game on Wednesday, especially our pitching staff. Like, I can't overthrow our pitchers on Tuesday with a midweek game. And then Thursday we've been on the road again, and you have a way different practice on the road when you get to another facility than you do at home. So that, I think, has been the biggest thing that I'm not seeing us able to coach as much as we typically do when we play a lot more home games, and the development has been a lot slower. We still have 4 weeks to go, and, you know, postseason 5 and 6. So, you know, it's not the end of the season, but fatigue, yes, is a factor, but I think we are paying a lot more attention to recovery and making sure that they are getting the proper recovery and what they're doing in the training room, and if it is any protein shakes and things like that, so that we are able to rebound. But from a coaching standpoint, it's the limited practice time.
Any questions from Zoom? Natalie, Karen?
Hey, Coach. I wanted to ask about Maya Dodge. She's come back to earth a little bit at the plate after an awesome East Coast trip, but this past weekend she robbed a home run out in left field. Could you just speak on her development and how far she's come, especially over these past few weeks? Yeah.
She has, and she's still learning. Like, there's a big difference between the teams we played out on the East Coast and the SEC. She has to be able to make some faster adjustments in terms of how teams are pitching her and what pitches she needs to be looking for. I saw growth, even though she didn't get the results. I saw much better growth from game 1 to game 3 in terms of her at bats. But her defensive play, like she went to Alex Honnold before game 2 and said, I'm going after every single ball I possibly can until you call me off. So it's kind of like that aggressive mentality that she needs to have out there and trusting herself and not waiting for someone else to call her off. So it's really just that aggressive mentality that I've seen that she's really growing with.
So I wanted to ask about, I think you had said something about how the players were kind of unsure of themselves when facing dominant pitching. So like, how do you get them back into that mindset of how they had so much success against like Maddie Pinta in game 1? How do they get back to that?
Yeah, I know exactly. And it's just, it's, you can do some measurables. So we have some analytic measurables and some programs we have in our stadium, which is really why it's so important for us to practice at home, that we can measure exit velocity. So showing them, you know, when you're tentative and you're swinging with just your hands, your exit velocity is 55. When you really get after it and push into the ground with your lower body, your exit velocity is 75. So then they can start to see some of those things and then feel what that feels like. And then it's just constantly like that self-talk. Like athletes need that positive self-talk. And when an athlete is saying like, don't strike out rather than attack, it's a mindset. So from a coaching standpoint, almost getting in their ear when they're having batting practice on, here it comes, get after it, attack, swing hard, push into the ground, like all those positive words. So then that's the self-talk that they're having. Because in the game, you don't know what they're thinking. And athletes never ever want to fail. And in softball and baseball, you're going to fail more than you're going to succeed. And the feeling of striking out sometimes is the most devastating for them. And then getting back to giving them permission to strike out, but strike out with authority rather than strike out being defensive.
Any other questions from Zoom?
Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Coach.
Thank you.